Good afternoon, everybody. I know Judge is still on the bench, but let's go ahead and get started in the interest of time. At least my copy of the afternoon calendar is pretty thick. Today, I'm glad to have my friend Matt Simmons of Maxwell, Hendry Simmons here to give us a market update and also give us some practice pointers on appraisal reviews, and then both presentation of an appraiser as your expert, and then also cross-examination of the opposing appraiser. I'll tell you that I have tried probably 3 or 4 cases with Matt. He's done a phenomenal job in each and every one of them. If you haven't had the pleasure to work with him, I'd suggest that you consider using him in your next case, or hopefully you won't have him on the other side. Matt has been working in the appraisal industry since 2003. In 2005, he joined Mike Maxwell and Gerald Hendry at Maxwell, Hendry Simmons Valuation Services, and he is a partner there. Matt also has the distinction of being the youngest person ever appointed to serve on the State Appraisal Board. He also served as a chairman in 2014. So I would, my opinion, and I'd suggest to you that he's a great asset in our community. So with that, Matt.
Appreciate it, Luis. It's a lot to live up to. So I'm glad to be here to talk to you guys today. We came, Mike Maxwell, Gerald Hendry, and I, about 2 years ago. Some of you remember. Hopefully in a good way, and hopefully that wasn't a bad nod of, yeah, I remember. So some of what we're going to talk about today is going to cover some of the same subject area. But the primary focus of what we're going to go over is actually relative to a market update. We give these presentations a lot. Usually when I do these presentations, it's to a brokerage and a group of agents, understandably. I gave a presentation last Friday to a group of 40 or 50 property managers and had something happen I'd never had happen before. The fire alarm went off mid-presentation and went off for the remainder of the 1 hour that we all had to sit there for the presentation. So hopefully we won't have that kind of thing happen. But my goal here, we're going to cover a lot of ground. I've thrown together a ton of different slides that touch on things that I think may inform you depending on where you work. But I also hope that if you have questions, that feel free to just interject at any time. I'll also try to be done at least by 12:45 here, so that if there's any questions, you can ask them then. But feel free to shoot as we go. So we've got a combination of a lot of different slides we're using. One thing I want to mention: a lot of this that you're going to see today and that we've produced comes from our market research team that we have in-house. We produce once a month. Some of you may receive them, what we call our market snapshots. And we consider it a good way for people to stay up to date with what's going on with the market. One time a month, you get an email, and it comes to you with these 2 links: one commercial segment of the market and one residential segment. Nothing about the weather or about anything like these emails we all get from all these people that send them out. It's just nothing but the meat and potatoes of, boom, digest this in 30, 45 seconds if you're interested. And then we archive all of these on our website, so you can find them going back over 2 years now. So we put the data out there. We're not proprietary about it. We kind of think that in the age of big data, it's not about holding onto the information. It's about who can analyze it and interpret it correctly. So we put the data out there to everybody. And so if you're interested in those, if you have a business card, or I'll have a sign-up sheet. In fact, I'll go ahead and pull it out now. Then feel free to put your information on it, and if not, that's fine, but these are just something that we produce that have become really popular, and a lot of what you'll see today kind of stems from that part of what we do. Some of you probably will remember these slides that we showed you a couple years ago. These are the most popular thing that we've produced. Every red dot you see, and I know it's a little bit kind of blurry from where you're at, you're seeing a map of Lee County. Every red dot is a new home completed in this given year. The year you're looking at is 1970. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'll let you know as we go. So that's all new homes that were just completed, not completed up to 1970, just completed in the year 1970. As you can tell, our development was clustered around the river and around other bodies of water. Stands to reason, no surprise there. 1980. All right, much of the same pattern of development in the county. What's interesting to see here, though, is that Cape Coral is really starting to kind of expand. We're seeing a lot more growth that direction. You're starting to see also sprawl out into to the eastern portion of the county, into Lehigh, and then the southern sections of the county are also growing by 1980. 1990, Cape Coral's really started to expand. Look at San Carlos and Three Oaks, right around in here. So I can give you the weather when I do this. But you know, we've got a lot of growth obviously by 1990, a lot of expansion throughout the county. 2000, okay? Again, Cape Coral, wow, look what's going on. Look how much we're expanding out in Cape Coral and on the south end of the county. The other thing I always like to talk to people about here too is what happened between 1990 and 2000 relative to Cape Coral, Midpoint Bridge. Going back one to 1990, you see development start to creep upward, taking advantage of the linkage that the Midpoint Bridge provided. So that's 2000, all right? 2005. Yeah. I'm quite certain many of you have dealt with properties that were involved, that is somehow represented by a red dot there, okay? That's just houses completed in the year 2005. Look at Cape Coral and Lehigh Acres, all right? What's interesting to me about this, aside from the whoa, is the rest of the county didn't have the same issue relative to overbuilding. So when we talk about overbuilding, it was really hyper-specific to Lehigh and Cape Coral. So that's 2005. 2010. So by 2010, this is how many houses we're at. All right? Still have some clustered development. We've actually got development out here in the tree line corridor, and then further south in the county, and again, sporadic development throughout Cape Coral, but again, major changes. 2013, we're starting to pick up a little bit more steam. 2014, same story, not much different here. We are still kind of steadily picking up steam. And then 2015, all right, starting to add a little bit more houses again. Not anywhere near what we had before, and that's going to be a theme of what we talk about today relative to where the market is. So we'll touch on why this is kind of important, but obviously we're building, we're adding houses, but as it relates to the market changing or where we're at, we are nowhere near as drunk as we were essentially 10, 12 years ago. So totally different story. So this is a chart, again, it's kind of hard to see, so I'll tell you what this represents. This is 1970, 80, 90, 2000, 2005, and then it's to 2010, and this is only updated to 2013. But if you had 2014 and 2015 on this chart, they'd be about there. Not a big difference. But again, totally in context. This is the anomaly. That's the total anomaly, all right? As good as things have kind of been in the market recently, we're nowhere near making the mistakes that we made before. Well, that's not a slide. Okay. Well, that gave away. All right. I had a slide here that had a chart of sales. Now you see it was Ave Maria. So I'll go ahead and tell you what the chart asks. What's the best-selling community in all of Southwest Florida? Ave Maria. Okay. I'll just tell you, if you haven't been down there to see what's going on, you need to go down there and check it out. It is incredible what's being done there. They're pulling buyers from eastern Lee County. They're pulling a ton of buyers from Collier County due to affordability. And they're pulling buyers now also from the East Coast. There are a ton of people who, the sales office reports, they still live in Fort Lauderdale, you know, in Weston, and they're commuting from Ave Maria because it's still better than living, you know, somewhere else in Dayton, Broward, and having an hour and 15-minute commute. Okay, there we go. So there's Ave Maria, if you haven't been down there. That's the cathedral on Annunciation Circle. Cool little place. They got a lot of shops and restaurants and things going on. You really ought to go check it out. These are pie charts of the sales. Won't get too into the weeds on these, but essentially, where Ave Maria is now, they've got over 1,000 homes sold. There were 287 homes sold just in 2015. I mean, that's staggering. And they just set a record. It was just released in the past few days, if any of you saw it. They sold 35 homes just in April of 2016. And that beat their previous record of 34 that they had back in February of 2015. They are eating houses alive. We do a lot of the subdivision work for them. You can see a lot of the absorption. They are killing it down there with affordability. Stands to reason. So, another little thing I told you, this is kind of a combination of different presentations we've given. So this is something that we've done relative to cash versus conventional. And I would think it would have some interest to you. The red line represents the percentage of conventional sales in the residential market, finance sales. The blue line represents cash sales. What started to happen here over the past year or two really is we've started seeing the percentage of sales financed really start to increase. Not at an alarming rate, but we're starting to wean ourselves off of all these cash deals that frankly the affordability and the distressed nature of our market had attracted for so long. We've spent the past 6 or 7 years, Cape Coral and Fort Myers, if you were to average those 6-7 years, we've been far and away the highest cash percentage MSA in the country. It's not even close. And so we're starting to change that now with additional finance deals coming into the mix. So, this is kind of the overall theme chart that I wanted to show you. What you're seeing, and again, I know it's probably a little difficult to tell, but this top line represents the median home price in Lee County over the past 15, 16 years now, all right? You can tell where the peak of the mountain is, and that's at November 2005. What you see in the green line is the price of vacant lots in Cape Coral. I'll tell you why I'm showing you this in a moment. And the light blue line are the price of lots in Lehigh Acres. Again, for frame of reference, Lehigh Acres lots in July, August of 2005, you were paying like $40,000 for a lot in Lehigh. That is insane. There is no scarcity whatsoever. There's no market fundamental that would ever tell you that what we saw should have happened. But it did. But why is this important? Because a lot of people, as the market has changed over the past several months, you've probably read about it, and I agree, it is changing. We're cooling off. We're not seeing anywhere near the increases that we've seen in recent years. And you can tell by the tail end there. See the tail end? That represents almost exactly 1 year of time. We're basically kind of flat. It's about 4 or 5%, but really it's up and down. We're kind of flat over the past 8-9 months. So people are saying, okay, the market's changing. What does that mean? Oh no, when the market last changed, it meant death and pestilence for everyone.
Except for us.
Except for you, yes. Not the same scenario here though, okay? When the market changed last time, we were at the very peak of a roller coaster that was primed for a dive. But part of the reason why, you remember the graph earlier we looked at with Cape Coral and Lehigh Acres and the overbuilding? Cape Coral and Lehigh lots also dovetail perfectly with this. Where are they at now? We're not seeing nearly the same thing. So the fundamentals in pricing, the rise that we've seen, is much more stable and consistent. It's actually completely in line with incomes. There's a little bit of an affordability issue, but our median, in fact, we developed this analysis with this chart last year. Our median price home is priced properly based on our income. Okay, I'm going to get into the weeds on that, but we're not overpriced. Back in 2005, we were like 140%. Where we should have been. All right. So totally different story. If there's anything that I want you as a theme to take away from this, it's that what happened last time is nowhere near what's going on right now. Right now is a change. May not even be a dip, but it's a change. But some people are getting a little lost. I'm hearing lately people talking about, but we formed the bubble again, and there's, we're primed for a dive, and values are going to go down. I don't see anything that suggests that there is going to be any substantial decrease in values. I think we are plateauing, and frankly, right now we're still at probably a 2 to 3% annual increase. But there's no reason that fundamentally we should see what we saw back when the market last corrected. So I want to transition now to talking about some commercial stuff, okay? And I want to show you a couple of intriguing sales. And and they kind of speak to where the commercial market is. Property on the left, you see the Channelside apartment project. If any of you are familiar with that sale, it says closed Wednesday. That's from I should have updated that. That sale closed in March for $55 million, which was $169,000 per apartment unit. Now, that is an insane price for Lee County. Collier County has a tough time having any apartment projects that sell at that much per unit. 169, I mean, that's really prime Tampa, Sarasota apartment projects can pull.
Where is that?
Channelside is down across from Gulf Harbor.
Okay.
Yeah, context would be
Recently
there.
built?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You remember the guy that owned that? We did the bankruptcy.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was vacant when I did, when I was involved.
Well, they're doing okay on it now.
Yeah.
Obviously.
The guy who took that project
If you just
made,
could have waited.
yeah, exactly. Well, this guy just made a fortune on it. He immediately got it leased up, got it sold, and he's on to the next one. He's now building stuff down in Estero. But the cap rate on this, 5.5% cap rate. That is an institutional grade investment quality cap rate. That is really low. The cap rate just being the expression of, price and income. That is a low, low cap rate. Essentially, the buyer of that is saying, I'm safe, I'm good here. That's the kind of cap rate that you buy a Walgreens or something at, okay? Really, really safe investment quality asset. Tanger Outlets, not far from there, just closed in January. That sold at a 7 cap, which is a great cap rate on a project like that. Additional couple projects I want to talk about. University Plaza, that's down at Gulf Coast Town Center. And then Sanibel Beach Place. University Plaza pulled a cap rate around 6.5. That's a really good indication that the market sees that as a safe, stable product, that it's a nice place to park some money right now. And now I want to talk about first quarter commercial transactions more generally. And the takeaway here, don't get lost in the numbers. The real takeaway is that although our total transactions for the first quarter commercially were down, they were 86 as opposed to the numbers that you see for the previous years, the average transaction, the average sale price is way up. Part of that has to do with the type of properties that are selling, some of which we just showed you, and we'll talk about why that is. Why are these expensive investment grade properties trading right now? So downtown Fort Myers, I'll show you, this is one of Gerald's slides, Gerald Hendry to be honest. But that's actually Luis Insigniera's office, okay, over there on Jackson, and that's it back in 1945. But out in front of it is actually Gerald's dad. Gerald's grandmother lived in that house downtown. So Gerald, ran around down there. And so Gerald gave me a little primer, when we threw that photo in. But that's what I get, I guess, for being a partner with the Hendry. So anyway, yeah, that's the changes going on in downtown are significant. We're going to talk about a couple of projects now relative to downtown. First Street Place. You see over on the left, that's the proposed project right next to Rutzel's office there, okay? Yep, it's David Fry's project. 80,000 square foot mixed use project that's proposed. On the right, you see Allure, 292 units. Everybody's kind of heard about Allure. They're reporting some pending prices down there on penthouse units that blow my mind. I mean, we're talking $2-3 million. They're saying that they've got deposits on penthouse units in downtown Fort Myers. So, I haven't seen them, but I'm just telling you what I've heard. Okay. Campo Feliz. McFarland obviously is taking that project. That's well underway at this point, and most of you probably know about that. The Bay Street project, I think that's on Randy Henderson's piece, and Phil Fischler, that's one of his projects. But another mixed-use project similar to First Street Village that's proposed right here in downtown. So some really cool stuff that's in the works. A couple more, the view over next to Centennial Park. You guys are familiar probably with that. Obviously, that's been a point of interest for a few people for different reasons over the years. And then the new hotel that's proposed with Harborside. Mainsail Lodging is actually a client of ours. We worked with them after the initial deal fell through to connect them with the city and put the deal together. And so we've been working on the Harborside deal for a while, and I'll just tell you, we've got the right people building this hotel. These are hotel people. They know what they're doing, and the product they're going to propose is going to be really cool. It's going to be a signature type of hotel in the Marriott brand, and I think it'll be something that'll be a hallmark of downtown. So there'll be more to come with them. Moving forward, a couple things going on. Gardner's Park, a redevelopment area, bordered by, you've got 82 and it's actually 2nd Street there, but this is on the east side of downtown around Fowler. So some of you are familiar with the redevelopment projects through there. Again, I'm just touching on a lot of different things. Any of this that you're interested in, let me know and I'll give you some more detailed info, but I just want to kind of unload on you all the different stuff that's going on in different places. And if you're interested, let me know. Midtown, just south of Martin Luther King, bound by Edison to the south, Fowler and 41. A lot of plans within Midtown, a lot of redevelopment incentives put in place for people who will step into that area and propose some projects. And there's a lot of projects right now being proposed in Midtown. So a couple sales downtown, a combination of units in the Earnhardt building that sold for a little over $300 a square foot back here in February. That's a great price on that project. Then the sale on the right, that's most of Patio de Leon, selling back last June for $290 a square foot. Again, good solid prices and people stepping in to invest in downtown Fort Myers. And then the post office property. Watch for this at some point to become, we're analyzing this as land. Now there's a lease that I think has 5 years left with the post office, and it's a good lease. And I imagine whoever develops it will want to keep the post office in place as a tenant, but I think there's a mixed use project that's going to go up on that site. That site is perfect for it. So we analyze it as land at $38 a square foot after taking out the ancillary income. Good price on that piece of property. Shows that investors are really willing to take a chance downtown. We talked about Midtown, south of downtown proper. It's a property that just sold at $119 a square foot around Union and Jackson. That's a great price on that property. That property would have sold for $70, $80 a foot early last year. So I think this is reflective of the interest that Midtown is generating. Downtown office vacancy, I'm not going to get into all this in too much detail, but the gist is, if you have Class A or B office space, we've got a really low vacancy rate, below 4%. Oftentimes when we talk about vacancies in different markets, we talk about the entire pool, but really that doesn't tell the whole story. But for anybody who's worked in downtown or been down, most downtowns, long enough, there's a lot of space that has some functional issues. So when you really look at vacancy, you can't look at vacancy in its totality. You have to look at it in sector. Yes, among the lower class, C and D space, there's 15, 23% vacancy, but a lot of that space just can't be brought to market because of its functional problems. For good space, it's at a premium. And why do I talk about that? Because what we just talked about with the interest in downtown and all the proposed projects, investors are realizing we need more Class A office space in downtown. And I think whoever jumps to that first will be handsomely rewarded for it. I think we could absorb a ton of space right now if we had it. Frankly, my firm, we would move back down in a heartbeat if we had a good receiver space to go to at this point for what we were looking for. Lee County net leased retail properties. I'm not going to get into the Treasury note and put everyone to sleep. But the gist is we've got low cap rates on our properties right now with a healthy spread above the Treasury. And as it relates to the cap rates that we're seeing, go back. Again, it's an expression of how safe the investment is, essentially, or how sure it is. So the lower the cap rate, the more secure or risk averse the investment is. The higher the cap rate, the more, I don't know if I'm going to actually get my money here. So what we're seeing, a lot of foreign investment coming from really around the world. I mean, we've got negative rates in other countries right now, so we're seeing an influx of capital into the country, but we're also seeing it in the Southwest Florida. Because that foreign investment that's coming in, a lot of it is coming in, of course, the bigger cities. So your Chicago's, your New York's, in Florida, your Miami's, your Tampa's, your Orlando's, the premium properties there, the people who are local, who would naturally be buyers, are being priced out of the market essentially by the foreign money that just wants somewhere safe to park it. So where are those people going? We're seeing other ancillary markets like Southwest Florida be the beneficiary of domestic money that's being pushed out though by foreign money. So that's a lot of what we're starting to see is money from around the country looking at Southwest Florida and saying, let me park here because I can still find something with a decent rate of return that I could not get in a larger market. The Fed funds and the 10-year Treasury, I won't say anything here other than to say our Fed funds rate can't really go any lower unless we go negative. I think we can expect it to increase. When we see it increase, probably within the next year, and I don't even want to say that because how long have people been saying that, but when we see it increase, we will see some pressure on those cap rates. So some of those prices that we're seeing, we won't see those prices anymore because we can't pay those prices because we still have to have a spread in the cap rate. Land lease sales, that's an expression of cap rates on some sales. Panera, an Outback, a Chili's, we've got a list of sales, but the takeaway here is the cap rates on land leases are also being highly desired by investors. We're in a really, really good spot with these sales for our marketplace. Medical net lease properties. I don't know if anybody has dealt with any of these or seen the praise, but my goodness, if you know of a doctor, if you've got anyone who's got a medical practice who's willing to sign a long-term lease and sell their building, they'll probably make more money off of that than they will their actual practice. I mean, these things are in high demand. That's the property across from Lakes Park. I always knew it as the orthopedics place, but sold in 2013 for $12 million at a 7.9 cap rate, same property, okay? 2015, $14.8 million.
I mean, Lions Park?
Yeah, across from Lions Park. Did I say somewhere
I
else?
said Lakes.
Okay, yeah, Lions Park, sorry.
Let's do Kung Fu place.
Yeah, with a cap rate of 6.6%. Huge difference in 2 years. That shows you how much more in demand our properties have become. Money getting pushed our way. People looking for somewhere safe to park it. That's medical sale leasebacks in a nutshell. We've already kind of talked about that. Sale to asking price ratios. You're essentially getting a higher percentage of your listing price. That's the takeaway there across all three commercial segments. Rents are up on industrial. That's the Alico corridor, everything going on there. I mean, we can't keep that slide updated fast enough with everything that's going on in that corridor. The Alico Ben Hill Griffin corridor with Gulf Coast Town Center. Office vacancy is going down. That's basically the takeaway. Bonita Springs, you see, has a really high vacancy rate, but that's mostly relative to one project, Riverwalk down there. So that's really kind of skewed. Our vacancy is declining. We're at a pretty good place.
What's the impact of the foreclosure of Town Center?
I don't think there will be. I think it'll be seamless. You know, that project was about the leverage placed on it 10 years ago, not about any performance issues now. And I know this is the line they give, nothing's going to change, but I really don't think anything is going to change. I know there's people already, there were people who were trying to work out a deal with Wells Fargo before the auction. They had that much interest.
What about the impact of the Tweenie retail squat that's happening with a lot of the, like, Sports Authority and
Yeah.
Aeropostal and...
Yeah, well, the larger macro stuff, the big box stuff, that's just a market dynamic that is real and is a challenge. I don't think you're going to see any. I think we can absorb based on how much that area, for example, how much that's growing, that can absorb the big box that's there. I don't think we see any risk of that stuff going dark for a long period of time. But I do think you're not going to see much more of that build. I mean, the reality is the Amazons of the world are changing dynamics across. They're changing industrial dynamics. So a lot of that is changing. So where are we at in summary? The market is definitely slowing residentially. Expect low appreciation or flat for the year. There's actually been demand for smaller, more energy efficient homes, and then infill residential projects are really what your developers are having to settle for. Commercially, we talked about institutional grade. Commercial real estate, that's been in high demand. Smaller strip center, Class B and C space, hadn't really been all that hot, just kind of floundering. And then commercially, there's several new projects in the pipeline, but I do think commercially, at least, we need to think about how much multifamily we're building. My goodness, I mean, how many apartment projects, newer apartment projects are we all driving by to and from work? So multifamily, if there's an area that may be a little concerning, commercial, that would be where it is. Again, we covered a lot of this, so I'm not actually going to spend hardly any time here. The gist of what I want to tell you about, let me just get to you to the cases, and then I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts on expert witness relative to valuation professionals. Dalbert, okay, I'm sure. And this is, of course, the part of the presentation where I realize I'm giving you information that you know more about than me. So I do this with caution. General Electric v. Joyner and Kumho Tire v. Carmichael, which I know that was a local case, or on the alley here. But those are the cases that we found have kind of come up most as it relates to expert witness work, or valuation professionals. That's the stuff that we really try to focus on and make sure we stay within, again, the Dalbert standard.
It's important to, your reports, your written reports, just track Dalbert, and I think, at least that's what I thought you guys had used it before. It really makes it easier on a litigator when you get your report in.
Yeah.
It guides the prep.
Yeah,
for both of you.
and that's the takeaway of all this. That's why I'm kind of rushing through this. Some of this we'd already worked with before. We actually had this, Walters versus State Road Department. There's a quote in there about an appraiser expert witness. There was no way to rebut a secret, purely subjective formula that existed, if at all, only in the mind of the appraiser. We had a case last week in district court where that was quoted, and not against us, but on the appraiser on the other side. The judge did not strike the testimony, but took it under advisement. But we actually had that come up, and the testimony qualified for that objection. But the gist of what I wanted to leave you with was, we've talked about big data, we've talked about analytics, we've talked about, obviously, in the past, not so much today, the Dalbert standard. There used to be a time where, you know, you would have your expert witness, frankly, and I think there was a little bit of you had some initials after your name and some gray hairs, and that kind of sufficed for how much really was dug into, and you were able to get away with some things that you can't now. You can now, but not if you've got somebody who actually has the data on the other side. And that's really what I'm trying to impart to you. There is a tremendous amount of data and empirical evidence that can be generated to prove or disprove, as it relates to valuation, what someone does. And I would just implore you, whether it's us or someone else, work with someone who is actually digging into the numbers and can tell you where everything in that report comes from. Because I sell my opinion for a living, okay? There are standards of practice that we certainly adhere to, but there is part art and part science in what we do. But for the scientific portions of it, you'd better make sure that everything that's in there is defensible. And I'm just telling you now, from the work I do on the state board, and I see the full files, you can rip apart virtually any appraisal, and this is not just for bank work, this is for litigation work. It's easily able to be pulled apart. We do it in litigation support a lot. And part of that is as we're transitioning from the era of it's worth something because I say it is, into here's the data, here's the analysis. If you challenge me, I can run down the rabbit trail with you as far as you want and explain my rationale. So that would be, I guess, what I would leave you with. I didn't want to cover so much of what I had it in here, but I didn't want to cover so much of what we did last time. I wanted to focus on the market update. But certainly as it relates to expert witness work or standards of practice or things like that, let me know. But with that, I guess I'll ask if you have any questions. No questions?
Really, I mean, it's fascinating what's happening downtown. I just I love seeing it. Hopefully it will keep going, because
Right.
aren't there caps on how many units you can have from a residential point of view downtown?
It's envisioned that they're caps.
However, nobody gets around to building it, so it's pretty much of a moot point. I
Yeah, and here's what I'd say relative to the policy perspective, and that's not necessarily my area of expertise, but if you produce a project that is demonstrably beneficial to the tax base, I think you'll find out that you can do just about whatever you want.
There's a shot.
So there you go. But yeah, if there's not any other questions, again, we didn't have a whole lot of time to get through it, and some of this I didn't want to be repetitive from before, but you've got my contact information. If you're interested in this data, again, you get 1 email per month. I don't pepper you with it, and then sign up for it, and if we can ever be a resource to you guys, certainly let me know, or if any of this piques your interest and you just want to know more, let me know. So thank you.
All right, I told you wouldn't be disappointed.
No, it's
That was
really
great.
interesting.
And I'll tell you that on a personal standpoint, I had a trial with Matt a few months ago where we were able, in front of Judge Delano, and I guess regrettably for the debtor, we were able to completely discredit the other appraiser's testimony and the other appraisal report. I'm not so sure that it was so much because, sort of the like Judge Williamson says, it's called the Ipsy-Dixie factor. It was, the value was, his testimony was not that the value was there because I say so, but that's the way the testimony, that's the way the report read and the way the testimony was presented. The other expert, neither the expert nor the lawyer were prepared to be challenged on the underlying data. And so that coupled with some errors, not so much mistruths or falsehoods, but there were some mistakes in the data. There were comps that were used that were short sales when they shouldn't have been, or there wasn't an appropriate. But my point was that my sort of practice pointer from that case was that if you're prepared with the underlying data, you're in a better position to not only make your client's position on value more credible, but also attack and discredit the opposing party.
You're trying to get a higher value?
We were trying to get a higher value. It was on a motion to determine a secured status in a Chapter 13 case, and I represented the junior lien holder.
And then in another case that Judge Delano tried a contested confirmation hearing in a community self-storage case, one of the experts' testimony got thrown out because the data was not sourced appropriately. They didn't say where they got the data and why it was appropriate. And the guy was a great expert, it's just they forgot to prove up the underlying where the hard data came from and why it was good.
Yeah, I would, the expert, similar point, I don't think that the expert on our side, on the other side, was necessarily that bad. I think he had a credible reputation in town, and he made some errors, but it's, his opinion was, I think generally probably in the ballpark. Obviously, we wanted to be on the higher end of the ballpark, and he wanted to be on the lower, but, and it just came down, Judge Delano, read a ruling into the record that, probably took her 10, 12 minutes. I think it was for the benefit of the debtor, explain why she was coming out the way she did, but it was not favorable for this appraiser. And it was, just basically, she couldn't give his testimony any credit because he didn't have, he wasn't prepared to present the underlying data or, where to source the data. And then, the errors that he made went to, I think his credibility. So, all right, with that, I think that next, I can't recall. All right. Yeah, so June, 4th Thursday in June, 23rd. Our resident Ponzi expert, Jerry McHale, is going to give us, some words of wisdom, some practice pointers, but mostly just some good old juicy war stories. So this presentation, I've applied for CLE credit. I'd probably expect it before the next meeting, but my fault. I applied late, so I'll get it to you. But we've applied for 1 hour of CLE credit. Does anybody else have any announcements or anything? All right, thank you. Thanks again, Matt.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.